Hey, Richard Bryce here, tennis hacker. In this video, I'm going to help you to fix one of the most common problems that prevents players from developing a high-level forehand. If you're dealing with this issue, you're simply not going to be able to develop a high-level forehand until you fix the problem. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in match format. I've pulled up a match that I found on YouTube. It's a 3.5 level match, but realistically, I could have chosen any 3.5 match, any 4.0 match, and most 4.5 level matches, because this problem is very common and it's something that you have to fix if you want to be able to efficiently use your kinetic chain so that you can hit with both power, spin, and control. So we're going to take a look at the match, then we're going to compare it to what it looks like when the pros hit the ball, and then I'm going to lay out a three-step process that you need to go through if you want to fix the problem, because potentially you already know that you're dealing with this issue but you haven't been able to solve it. And the reason for that is you need to work on each of these three steps if you want to fix the problem. So let's start by taking a look at the point in its entirety. And this is a pretty good 3.5 match. If you compare this to a lot of 3.5 matches on YouTube, the quality of the points is good. I would argue in a lot of places these two could be playing 4.0 level tennis. Now I'm going to pick on this guy in a moment, but he's actually doing a lot of good stuff. His footwork in general is pretty good. His movement is good, which is something that most players struggle with, but he's making a fundamental kind of error, or there's a problem going on, but it's actually something that's going on with both players, and it's going on both their forehands and their backhands. That's how common it is. And this is what you see when you see players playing at a lot of different levels. So let's take a look at it again. I'm going to pause it at a certain point so you can see what I mean. And what I want you to look out for is his spacing. I want you to look how close he is when he hits his shot. So his distance from the ball. And what you'll see is it is extremely close. If we kind of look at this distance here between him and the ball, he's simply set up too close to the ball to be able to hit a good quality shot. So if we kind of fast forward it just a little bit, take a look at his elbow position. He simply doesn't have enough space to be able to hit a good quality ball. But then if we keep going forwards and we watch the next shot that gets hit by the guy down the other end, we watch his backhand, he's got exactly the same problem going on with his backhand. He sets up too close and he's just completely jammed. And then if we watch the third shot in a row, we're going to see exactly the same thing on this guy's backhand, just setting up way too close to the ball. So, you know, there's no room here to use efficient biomechanics. So this is something that you have to fix if you want to be able to efficiently use your kinetic chain to create racket head speed. And obviously that's what we need to do. So let's kind of compare that to what it looks like with the pros, and then we'll talk about the three steps that you need to go through to fix the problem. So let's start by comparing him to Alcaraz. And as I say that, we've got to be a little bit sensible, because Alcaraz is one of the best players on the planet, and we're comparing Alcaraz to a 3.5 player. So obviously a 3.5 player isn't going to hit the ball like Alcaraz, and fixing this problem isn't suddenly going to give him Alcaraz's forehand, because there's a lot of variables involved in hitting a high-level forehand. But this is something that is very much under your control. If you look at how close or how far Alcaraz is away from this ball, you look at the position of his elbow, and you know, some players hit with a bent arm, some players hit with a straight arm, but the spacing component is what is important here. He's just set up with a lot more space between him and the ball. Now we're going to take a look at Jannik Sinner, and the reason that I chosen Sinner is because Sinner hits the ball with a bent arm structure compared to a straight arm structure, so it looks very different to Alcaraz's. But again, look at the distance between Jannik and between the ball, and although he's hitting with a fairly bent arm, again, look how far away it is from his side, and the reason that it's possible for him to do this is because of his spacing, because of how far he sets up away from the ball. When you watch all high-level forehands, they all use this inside-out swing path, and that only works if you create enough space. So this is a problem that most players need to fix if they want to develop their forehand. And like I said, this doesn't magically guarantee that you're going to hit the ball like the best players on the planet. That's crazy talk. But if you're too close to the ball, it's certainly going to prevent you from developing your stroke. So what we need to do now is kind of lay out the 3 steps that are involved in fixing the issue. The first step in our 3-step process is going to be high quality on-court practice, and the emphasis is on the words high quality, because poor practice doesn't enable you to improve, and unfortunately most players practice very poorly. They focus on way too many things and it just leaves them spinning their wheels. You have to focus on 1 or maximum 2 things at a time, and you need to fix the preparation and the setup first. So dealing with spacing is way more important than thinking about your racket lag or your contact or your follow through and stuff like that, because you can't fix those things until you've addressed this, because it comes first. And this isn't something that you'll be able to do in match play. There's simply too much stuff going on, especially if you've been playing for a long time. You might have to dial it back to working on single feeds. So heading out there with a ball machine or a coach or a friend, just working on 1 feed at a time. So the ball machine or a friend feeding it to your cross-court forehand so you can move out and try and hit the forehand, and all you're doing is thinking about the spacing, setting up further away from the ball. Then you do the same thing with inside-out forehands, you do the same thing with short forehands, you do the same thing with deep forehands, just working on 1 ball at a time until you're able to get the spacing like 80-90% of the time. When you can do that, you then move on to multiple feeds. So maybe now you're working on 2 different types of forehand, so you have to kind of alternate between them and recalibrate your spacing, or potentially you're working on hitting a backhand, then a forehand, and the whole idea of the backhand is just to distract you, so then you have to refocus on your spacing on the forehand, and then from there you can start to progress to kind of rallying, whether it's down the middle or cross court, because the feed is more variable. And once you can do that on a really high percentage level, then you move on to kind of point play and match play. But you really have to get enough repetitions at each of these levels to turn it into a habit. You have to habituate good spacing, but this on-court practice is only going to work fully if you follow steps 2 and 3. The second step in the process is to train and program in specific footwork patterns. Tennis is extremely hard. The hardest part is setting up in the right position, because every single shot that you ever hit is different. So you need to have a variety of different footwork patterns available to you if you want to have efficient movement and be able to set up in good positions. You need a good quality split step. You need to be able to use several different pivot steps. You need to have a few different options for your first step towards the ball. You need to have different options for the court coverage steps, and you need to have several different adjustment steps in order to be able to fine-tune your spacing. And you have to practice them without the ball first. I'm here demonstrating them on court, but you don't have to do this stuff on court. You can do it at home in your front room, you can do it in a car park, you can do it anywhere you've got space, but if you don't practice it without the ball there, you're never going to develop the ability to do it in a match situation. All professional players, all high-level juniors work on their footwork, and if you want to fix this spacing issue, it's something that you're going to need to do as well. To help you with that, I've created a free footwork program. I'll place a link up in the top corner over here, and I'll place a link down in the description so that you can download this free program and start to work on it, because it's such an important piece of the puzzle. The third and final step is going to be to train and improve your visual function, because everything you do on court depends on how well you can see. And one of the major reasons that most players get too close to the ball is because their visual systems aren't able to accurately read where the ball's going. They can't accurately predict how far the ball is away, and because of that, they end up getting too close to the ball. So that's why it's a 3-step process. You've got to have high quality on-court practice, you've got to program in footwork patterns so you can make the necessary adjustments, but you have to know how far the ball is away from you. Without this third piece, it's impossible to fix the problem. The good news though is it's actually relatively simple to do once you know how. Now the best plan is to start with assessments to kind of figure out what's going on with your visual system, and then from there you can start to incorporate simple training exercises into your regular training, and it's normally possible to make very quick improvements. Now, instead of going into that in detail here, I've made another video that's going to go into more detail, and it's going to show you a couple of my favorite assessments. I find that 99% of players struggle with these particular assessments, and it's one of the big things that holds them back. So if you would like to learn more about vision training for tennis and to go through these assessments, you want to watch this video here.